needs an introduction. But so I'd like to just introduce John by pointing to one of the things he's made. Put the slide out there. This is on his website. He's got a great website. Because John works with wood, and he also works with words. He's a woodsmith and a wordsmith. So this is a shelf of books all made of wood. And is it in a library?
Yeah, it's hanging in a library in Hamilton.
And is that a call number?
That's a call number. That's a call number, the Dewey Decimal number for wood identification, tree identification.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are all scraps of wood from my shop. Mahogany, walnut, ash, fir, there's a whole...
White oak.
White oak, yeah.
White oak is in there, yeah.
Can you identify any other ones?
That's hard to see.
Well, the one was rock.
Isn't that sumac over there?
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's not even all of it, though.
Okay, and so that's one of the things John's fashion. Oh, and in case you don't
Isn't that
recognize,
cheerful?
this is John.
I don't know where you're going now, but
I am going to. So John's writing has been recognized and honored through awards and through some of the books being finalists. To say, for instance, the Charles Taylor Prize for Creative Nonfiction for the Boys, one of the 5 finalists for that, and one of the first awards that John's poetry won was the CBC Radio Literary Competition for first prize for poet for Captain Kingtail. And another, I think, wonderful way that John's poetry has been broadcast and shared is, I'm not sure of the year, but the Governor General of Canada, in her Christmas address over CBC, has read John's Little Towns of Bethlehem, I think a few years in a row. So it's just recognizing John's writing and how it's been recognized across Canada. So I think I don't want to spend too much more time on introducing, and let's just get right down to brass tacks, some reading.
All right. Okay. So that's, and are we going to do like the back and forth thing too? Is that also part of the procedure? We'll see.
I won't interrupt you while you're reading.
Okay. All right. Thank goodness for small blessings. Okay, I'm going to start off with so I'm going to read a few poems. And now, let's not amuse people.
This is serious. There, how's that?
Yeah, that's a little microphone that I made. Oh, cute. That's right. Anyway, I'm going to read a short poem that I wrote. It's kind of a looking back sort of poem, asking myself questions about my calling. You know, you sometimes wonder when you may have received this thing, if you even perceive that you have a calling. So maybe for you, I just have to give you just this much background, that when I grew up going to church, we all sat in rows, in pews, and we filed in quietly and sat down quietly as well, and waited for the service to begin. It was just a different way that things were done. And this poem is called Wearing Pencils. Here I am, ready to work. Lined yellow paper pad, pencil sharpened in hand. It's comical, for now the waiting begins. And with this, with the passing thought that my preparedness is comical, it is Sunday morning again, our family's dress parade before the congregation, en route to our regular pew. And I, garbed in a suit jacket, a miniature of my father, am drawing amused smiles from the adults we pass, for the 5 tall and sharp yellow pencils lined up and on display in my breast pocket. There I was, ready to work. I had brought no pad or paper. If God wanted me to write, I suppose I figured God would provide. Maybe I was the paper. Who knew? I was prepared. Now all I had to do was sit still and wait. Which is what we did a lot of in church. Sit still. That was the thing. So I'm going to read a few 3 short poems from a series of poems called This Orchard Sound, and that's the piece of paper that you have in front of you. 25 years ago, I started going to a Presbyterian church that did not have a cross hanging in the front of the church, but I thought was odd. And so I contracted to provide a cross for the church, and I'd always wanted to be able to find a cross in nature rather than make one, because the ones that I saw that were made were often very hokey looking to me, hokey and unholy. And so I thought I'd find one in nature, and so they said, yes, go ahead. And then I looked in nature, and lo and behold, nature does not create trees that have that kind of shape naturally. And so then I thought, okay, where would they grow that way? And then I realized it would be in an orchard where trees have been cultivated. They've been made to do what they do by human hand. And then I thought, well, that's pretty appropriate, you know? The cross is a result of human action. Ha! So already when I began this little venture, I embarked on a spiritual journey that I did not know the dimensions of. In the end, I wrote 14 poems that I connected with something that's not in my religious tradition, which is the Stations of the Cross, the 14 Stations of the Cross, which is a Catholic tradition that I don't know a whole lot about, except that it's a Lenten thing, and the stations follow the journey of Christ from the garden to the crucifixion. And so these 14 poems follow that journey, with mostly the 3 I'm going to read to you at least do follow that progress. And so do I need to say anything else? I don't think so. I just recently, in the book, this little book came out last fall. It's called This Orchard Sound. And in it, there's just numbers. There's not actually, it doesn't give you an indication of which station of the cross it is. So I'm going to tell you which one it is. And this, so I'll read the first 3, and this one is the agony in the garden. I come to the garden alone, garden of fruit, fruit of the tree, apple, pear, peach, plum, cherry. The March earth is a mulch of last autumn, a half-frozen mass of leaves and produce that's yet attracting birds, if that's what the birds are after. There's so many, lifting off, landing, chatting like crazy, making this orchard sound like a major event. Lent, and in a little while, leaves, blossom time. Do these damned trees still believe everything is possible? The power of prayer? That the same old story bears repeating, adding to the 2 grand anno domini of borrowed time we already have? What will? To will one thing, no matter what, and to carry through, continue, ask, ask. The trees sweat their tears of sap as birds talk up this stillness. I probably should have said that when I went into the orchard that I went into to find this cross within the branching was an orchard that was slated for demolition. One of the many orchards in the Niagara Peninsula that become light industry or restaurants or whatever, parking lots. It's a very fertile area, much of which has gone under the different kind of plow. The second one is the Betrayal of Judas. Signatures had kissed the bottom line, and we left the garden, the orchard Dirk was raised on. And he told me how it was that in grade 5 he cried for the harvest he could only watch, torn from his natural roots and planted in those other unkind rows in a room. But that was then, and you wouldn't have recognized the place yourself, much less lose that self in the calculated tangle of limbs as Dirk had, and clipped and tended summers after school. It doesn't pay to feel, he said, when we arrived and saw his former landscape flattened, the trees shoved over, their underlimbs ripped free, horribly exposed, the dozer grumbling still at the turned earth, a yellow god insatiable of sacrifice. When the driver broke for coffee, I could have let him have it on the jaw or bit his ear off, but put that rock down, talk instead. Friend, I said, do what you have come for, then kiss off. And the third one is Christ and Pilate. The witness of Blue Delicious, plums, Santa Rosa, Early Golden, Burbank, Shiro, the evidence of Bartlett, Bosque, Kiefer, Anjou, Anjo in Anglo, and Claps, favored among pears. The testimony of apples, Northern, Greening, Snow, Melba, Ida the Red spies Mr. McIntosh, and the red and the golden, are you who they say you are? Delicious, not of this world. I find no fault in these trees. As you wander through their rows, as you stand facing each, do you hear how it speaks? Do you see the apple lean to the plum and whisper, sweet? Do you hear? No, of course not. Trees don't talk. You say that I am fruity. What's truth? So that's all I'll read from that series of poems. As you can maybe tell, I kind of work with a very close sort of correlation or connection between Christ and creation, and my own journey through this project had sorts of kind of resonances that I became even uncomfortable with, because I carried the thing out of the orchard, so there's a sense that I was Jesus too, but I was also the one who was crucifying. It got very complicated. So, and that's kind of in this series. Now available at your local bookstore. Sorry. So I'm going to read 3 poems from this book that came out a while ago now. It's called Disarmament, and that's the title poem. I'm going to read the title poem. And this sprang from a number of things, but one of them was we were at a friend's apartment in downtown Hamilton, and they lived on the 3rd floor, And across the street was this military museum, a small military museum, since gone. And from from the front lawn, well, it's in the first verse, but I'll tell you anyway. From the front lawn, there was a gun pointed, and it was pointed like directly at the balcony, you know? And it just got me thinking, you know, this, in some countries, this is for real. They point that thing, they shoot it, and it's your apartment, you know? And it got me thinking about all the complications involved with when Christ says to love your enemy. Which, if you listen to people who live in an apartment building even, can be a real challenge. So this is called disarmament. If you sit on the 3rd floor balcony of your 26-story apartment building downtown, you may find yourself staring down the barrel of a 25-pounder gun, a howitzer, positioned on the front lawn of the military museum across the street, and feel perfectly confident that it is disarmed, or hope so. We carry no weapons here. There is a formal requirement to love the one who stands beside the howitzer, whether the howitzer be disarmed or armed. And this keeps us in constant communication with the unseen one who stands behind the one who tomorrow may stand poised beside the howitzer. For there is always the part in us that considers the defense of our own bodies to be in our own hands, that would avenge injustice, the suffering of ourselves and others, regardless of formal requirements. And if they come with knife or fire, or if the gun is held to my daughter's head, if I and mine are driven into hiding under the high-level bridge, fleeing roundup, awaiting the inevitable with others of our social, religious, ethnic, or national community? No. I do not beforehand know what my response will be. Our lives run through our fingers like water, salt or red, the liquid drops that fall from our bodies, the bodies of others, fall onto the heated surface of current events. The drops suffer and dance across the surface and are released into the air. They rise as the unseen vapor of supplication and intercession. Our lives are the prayer given up against a cycle of violence. The prayer forms a cumulo witness, condensing under the floor of heaven. And you who read sky and radar screen, who understand the behavior of wind and cloud, the markings on overhead jets, how is it that you cannot detect the flight of the Spirit, my brother, my twin, or where a reconciling rain might fall? The war is never elsewhere. The seeds of conflict float down on parachutes. Its roots run deep as dandelions in the front lawn of the military museum. Our enemy currently lives behind a door on the 7th floor of the same downtown apartment building. He and his friends, male and female, toss bottles, shout up and down from the balcony to ground at all hours, keeping us in constant communication with the unseen one who sits beside us on our balcony, who lies beside us in our bed, listening. Inevitably, the volume is turned up as they dance to further taunt his formal requirement. Tonight we lie awake and invite the Spirit come brood over our 26 stories, the storied conflicts of a tired world, to tuck us under wing, all. Come, love. disarm us. So that was that poem. You may, yeah, that's a little longish, I know. I write a little longishly. This is what I often do. A little longishly, yes. And I'm going, this is another one, it's a two-pager as well. My wife and I reached the age that we had no idea this age was coming, but we reached the age where your parents pass away, which, you know, most of the time that you're living, you really think it's an impossibility. So it's quite, well, the events themselves can be quite dramatic, but that fact itself is, you know, it's a real wake-up call or something. I'm not sure what it is. So anyway, I tried to one of the things that poetry is a way of trying to both find and make meaning of your experience. And so that's what I'm often trying to do, and that's what I'm trying to do in this case. It sort of started from the event. My wife comes from New Jersey. We live in Hamilton, and we drove the 500 miles to her former home in New Jersey because her mom was not well. And that's sort of where this starts. And it's called Saying Goodnight. Lying in your mother's bed, 500 miles from home, having come to see her through her latest hospital stay, you're feeling a little like a young, blind puppy. The ticking from her bedside timepiece is louder, more richly mechanical than your own. The rhythmic, persistent push-pull of its internal clockwork that you imagine placing under the pillow. Meanwhile, on the third-floor ward, your mother, in her almost inaudible hospital voice, says, "I want to go home." Her finger, though, is pointing toward the ceiling, an action that so quickly depletes her body's strength, the arm soon falls, to lie beside her where she lies beyond the comfort of her eternal working parts, persistent push and pull. And I'm lying with you in your mother's bed, a disconnected appendage, and I want to go home too. I'm restless and dreaming we're on the third-floor deck of the ferry crossing the Bay of Fundy. Our center of gravity here is somewhere below and behind us, and we pivot smooth and hugely on swells and plungers that pitch and tilt us to radical angles in a rhythm entirely arrhythmic, unpredictable, that you'd never sleep a child to, though it isn't unpleasant. An obvious dream, I think, while dreaming it. A great white wave tries to wake us, exploding over the deck, and as the water pours down the lounge windows, a woman your mother's vintage laboriously stands, turns to her companion, and says, "Unbelievable." And it is, in a manner of speaking. She turns again, this time stepping toward the door, and says she wants to see for herself this ocean she and we and the Fundy ferry are pushing through. And turning in my dream of sleep as she turns to go, I inadvertently assume the same position in which I saw my father lie, half curled against the bed edge, as if to enclose within himself the black the doctor said he was so full of, blooming like phosphorescence. Yet it seemed a kind of return, his sleeping shape, It seemed so clear he was returning, and that the place was hospitable he was returning to, and this knowledge was contained within the pain-shaped form, his unbetraying body. I almost envied him his almost touching it, the still and endless moment when the moving vessel pulls to birth. Good night, Dad. Good night, Mom. Good night, sweet sainted parents, fathers, mothers, all. What more can you do than draw our fear away? Good night. And good night to all your parents' parents too. You're not so complicated any longer, or taxed by illness, age, infirmity, or us. Good night. Good night. See you in the morning. She smiles.
Because she's almost crying.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to read one more.
Okay.
Okay? And this is sort of an antidote. I don't know if the last poem needs an antidote, but it's I guess it's sad. You know, I write these things and then I don't know how much of my own emotion is invested into it until I read it aloud. So often a lot of the stuff that over the past number of years, the first place that I've read them is in church on a Sunday morning. So, and then the music director, our music director, often has some music. He composes some music to go. He calls it structured improv, the kind of music that he does. You know, and so he's playing along, I'm reading along, and then suddenly I go, you know, my voice fails, or you know, I jam up, and I didn't even know it was coming. I mean, there's a few places in the last poem that did that to me, sabotaged me as I was reading. So I'm going to read you this one. That's again kind of. Well, I guess you'd say in some ways it's environmentally themed. And it comes from a series of poems that I did that was, that all had the first line in the church where we go to now. The line just occurred to me one morning in church because our church was considerably different after a certain number of years than it had been before because of things that had happened. And it was better. I mean, it was, in a lot of ways, it was better. But to get there, we had to go through fire. So it wasn't a lot of fun. So it was nice to come out the other side. And this is one of the poems that came out of this. And it's called How It All Goes Round. I hear movement in the background. Okay, How It All Goes Round. In the church where we go to now, the time has come for redefinition. For instance, life everlasting. I'd like to think eternal being involves the rock face exposed by the highway blasted through, and the possibility of slipping one's new, improved body and soul between the seams that divide time from time, to land on a beach on the evening and the morning of the third day. Ah, creation. It would be good, very good. I'd like to think that forever and ever and ever and ever includes entering the cycle whereby water congregates on the horizon as medieval castle and is deconstructed directly overhead into 1,000,001 almost identically sized parts that simultaneously, one after the other, fall. I would ride the single drop on the windshield, in the downspout, jump the last few inches, and slip between the particles of earth, descending to the root of darkness, where I might rejoin my liquid kin and feel our urge to well spring into pond, creek, and be the river running to embody the lake, and await the surface touch of fire from 93 million miles, and enter our star's fire, the burn that prompts rising recongregation into the middle air, and begin again. The one I love loves how it all goes round and round and round. The one I love is of the air, is of fire, of water, rock, dancing. And if I am to be saved, if my religion allows, let it also be from this. Let me be saved from the ceaseless, unending, eternal ways that I and my body constrict in the face of this life, which is love everlasting. From how I and my body gravitate, fall for that other lover, death. The one I love lives in the air, on fire, underwater, through rock, breathing, liquid, molten, flowing, granite flames forever and ever and ever and ever lasting. Ah, creation. The one I love. The one the one. Thank you.